So, as you know, the Productive Pessimist Limited is a consultancy and coaching company focused on inclusion and management. And we're based in Lowestoft in Suffolk, where there's a high number of people who are out of work and in receipt of universal credit and indeed additional welfare support such as PIP or PIP. Now, if you've had anything to do with any kind of news outlet recently, you'll know exactly what the government's attitude, particularly to PIP, is, and especially to people who are on universal credit, PIP or other support because of mental health issues. At the Productive Pessimist Limited, we work exclusively in our inclusion remits from lived experience. I'm Ash. I head up the management training and consultancy side of the Productive Pessimist. I'm also diagnosed with schizophrenia. I've been diagnosed with schizophrenia since 2007. So almost 20 years now, kind of 17 years, which is a long time, but also long enough to become used to what the condition means for me and how to manage it. For me, my schizophrenia is paranoid variety, which means I can become, in a flare state, I can become very convinced of things that are not true and could not be true. A persistent delusion for me that I struggle with is I have extremely strong triggers around helicopters. If I hear a helicopter, I will become convinced that that helicopter is tracking me for some reason, and the intention of the people in that helicopter is to do me harm. That's not great when I live in a coastal town like Lowestoft, and when I'm not in a schizophrenia flare, I am very aware that the most likely explanation for hearing a helicopter is it's the air ambulance going out either on training or on a sea, beach or cliff rescue, which, that's really good stuff, and I'm really, really glad that the air ambulance is there to help people in those situations when they become ill or are injured. I'm aware. So now, for example, I'm stable. I'm not in a flare state, so I can be objective and I can go, yeah, this is probably why I'd hear a helicopter if I were to hear a helicopter. Unfortunately, if I were to hear a helicopter outside while I was recording this video, the video would not get recorded, or you would basically have a video of me in a fairly extreme flare state. I also find it very, very difficult to tolerate being left alone in a property, which again is tough to handle because when I'm not in a flare state, I am very much an introvert, and I actually enjoy my own company, and I am very used to entertaining myself. I'm very good at self-motivating. I can become very, very immersed very, very easily in self-motivated projects, and therefore when I'm stable, I often find other people to be somewhat of an intrusion. However, when the schizophrenia is more prominent than is ideal, I see it as abandonment, that people, my delusion is that people are leaving me because I've done something wrong, and they won't tell me what the thing that I've done wrong is. That's usually because I haven't actually done anything, but I'm certain that I have. And that delusion that things are happening because you're a bad person, you've done something wrong, the actual term for that is scrupulosity, and it does impact me in workplace environments as well. So, for example, I do not react well at all to, could we just have a chat? Have you got 5 minutes to come into my office? Or an email that has the subject line of, just wanted to talk about. Because my immediate assumption is, I've screwed up really, really badly. I've really annoyed everybody. I've done something awful, and I'm going to be fired, and the company's going to crash, and it's all going to be my fault. However unrealistic and unreasonable that sounds, that is what's going on in my head. And you can imagine the kind of state that means I turn up to a manager's office in, or I am in when I'm talking to a colleague who probably just wants to have a conversation about a new idea they've had for a project that we're working on jointly. It doesn't go well. And unfortunately, the level of understanding of mental health issues, and particularly serious psychiatric conditions, in the general population, which includes line managers and HR professionals, is not great. And the assumption is almost always that someone who is in a mental health flare, which means their condition is so prominent and so strong that their rational brain is not able to tuck it neatly out of sight and handle it later. The assumption is that person is attention seeking, they're trying to distract from a discipline situation, they're trying to avoid trouble, etc. So yeah, and that's before you even get to the minute you say schizophrenia to someone, their default assumption is that one day you're going to snap and murder everybody in the office with a stapler. And I'm not going to say that I've never had those thoughts. I think anybody who spends any time in an office, however sane they otherwise are, has days where they're just like, if I have to look at one more PowerPoint or attend one more meeting that could have been an email, I am going to flip. The thing is, those people don't, and neither do I. When I've caused harm, I've caused the harm to myself. It's never been to other people. I've gone into work the morning after a failed suicide attempt, because when I woke up and realised I was still alive, that was the only thing I could think to do. I am still alive. I therefore have to go into work. And that's the fundamental disconnect, is mental health issues, even the quote-unquote common issues like depression and anxiety, aren't always just, the perfectly ordinary challenges of life. Sometimes they are. I as well as the schizophrenia, I have depression and anxiety, and I'm able to be pretty functional with the depression and anxiety. I will just go, and certainly with the depression, I'll just go and get on with things. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to just go and get on with things. Things that I've had from line managers in reviews. People don't like your negativity. I need you to look more engaged when I'm talking to you. Why are you so miserable all the time? You can't just keep coming in and seeing the bad side of everything. And that's actually part of why I set up the Productive Pessimist, because those reviews also included the fact that I was one of the most efficient and productive team members. But it's not enough. It's not enough. People don't want you being negative. People don't want to hear that you're struggling. Everybody's struggling. Everybody's stressed. If everybody's stressed, you're not doing your job as a manager correctly. If everybody is stressed, including you, that means you can't do your job properly. That's why you need someone like the Productive Pessimist. But at the end of the day, you can't say to someone who is dealing with depression, you can't come into work like that. when the government is turning around and going, you can't have any support unless you're in work. You can't actually have additional support while you're in work. We actually just want you to go into work and stop bothering us. While management are turning around and going, you're not allowed to be in work unless you're completely happy and bubbly and you don't have resting neutral face, so your face is actively bubbly and happy because it bothers us. I'm a kinship carer. I provide care for my wife, who has several physical disabilities as well as autism and ADHD. Her name is Morgana, and if you book inclusion training through The Productive Pessimist, you'll get to meet her. She's a lovely woman, full of ideas, full of passion. But she needs me to help her motivate herself. She needs me to provide instructions for projects because she's not able to self-motivate. She needs me to keep her on track. She sometimes needs me to do things that she had intended to do, but she's in too much pain to do because of her cerebral palsy, or she doesn't have the coordination to do. And I'm dealing with that whilst hearing about men are trash. Men don't have the emotional bandwidth to actually care about their partners. Men don't know what it's like to have the burden of care. Men don't know what it's like to have to do emotional labour. Men's lives don't change a single bit, you know. And I can't talk about what's going on for me. I can't talk about how that commentary makes me feel, or how exhausted being a carer with no support outside of my relationship, no extra money, makes me feel. Because that's negative. That's oversharing. That's upsetting to people. I don't know if I will even ever be able to have another PAYE job. My last 2 PAYE jobs in the past 2 years, I lost because of issues around my sight loss, because I'm registered blind, and alongside that, because of personality clashes. When I have a personality clash with someone, I take it as my problem. That I, for some reason, don't get on with this person. And that's okay. I don't have to get on with everybody I meet. Not everybody has to get on with me. So long as we can be professional and courteous to each other, that's enough. But especially with younger colleagues, and unfortunately especially with younger colleagues in very female-dominated environments, I've found that I'm not welcome. I'm not welcome unless I can engage with life in the same way a woman in her 20s can. I'm not a woman. I'm not in my 20s. And I feel that that's going to be a fundamental point of pressure if the government pursues this attitude that mental illness is just an inability to cope with the ordinary stresses of life. Because the way men experience mental health issues, the way older people of any gender experience mental health issues, is very, very different to the way young women experience them. And that doesn't mean anybody's way of experiencing them is better or worse, or somebody is wrong and somebody else has all the answers. It's not even saying that all men experience mental health issues in the same way that many men do. I can't speak for all men, just as I can't speak for all women in their 20s. I can't speak for any women in their 20s, but I can speak for a lot of men that I've encountered. And we're the ones who are punished for having mental health issues, because we're always assumed to be on the edge of violence. And I don't think that's appreciated. I don't think it's appreciated just how far the pendulum has swung into include women and non-cis people, meaning keep men out, especially if those men might be violent. Even if those men have shown no signs of violence, but something they've disclosed to you makes you think they could be violent. And yeah, I very much agree that people need a purpose. For me, that purpose has never actually been successfully found in paid employment or PAYE work. It's always been found in things that I have self-started and done for myself. The first job I ever lost because of my sight loss, I thought would have been a career. I lost that job in 2019 because the bus route out from the city centre to 20 minutes away from the job site, that was the nearest bus stop, by the way, it was 20 minutes to walk, was scrapped. And from the city centre to the job site, or to this nearest bus stop, was a 6.5 mile walk along mostly unlit, unpaved roads. I got about a mile of lighting and pavement as I came out of the city centre, and the remaining 5 miles or so was unlit, unpaved roads. On one occasion, while I was still working in that job, the bus was still running. I was walking back in November, the end of my shift, walking down the lane to get to the bus stop, and there are roadworks going on. And a reminder, I'm registered blind. At this point, I wasn't aware of the extent of my sight loss, so I wasn't using a cane. And I fell into a roadworking trench that hadn't been roped off because I didn't see it. And I cut open my knee, I sprained my ankle, and I cut my forearm. And I went into work like that the next day, to find that my line manager was off because she'd trodden on a piece of Lego at home and her ankle hurt. I wanted that job to be a career. I committed to that job believing it could be a career. The job could have been done from home. The company wouldn't allow me to work from home in 2019. The most recent job I lost, which was a combination of many things, but predominantly the impact of my sight loss and personality clashes, I had believed would be a career. I'd stopped believing it could be a career at the point I lost the job, which made the loss a bit easier to bear, and I'd stopped believing that because I had been directly told that because of my sight loss I wouldn't be considered for progression. I wouldn't be considered for promotion, even though a colleague had actively encouraged me to go for a next step up vacancy that was available. When I asked what skills and attributes I'd need to prove to be considered for that position, I was told that because of the impact of my sight loss, I would never be considered for progression within the company. I had, at that point, begun looking for other opportunities, but the reality is I'm probably never going to find an opportunity unless I create it myself. When it comes to my mental illnesses, to the depression, the anxiety and the schizophrenia that I've been diagnosed with and I'm on medication for, I don't disclose those. I don't disclose those because there's no accommodations that can be made. The responsibility for accommodations of those is mine. But nobody's giving me anything No one's giving me opportunities. No one's giving me better pay. No one's giving me awards for just getting on with it. And I'd really like to talk to the Conservative government, to the Labour Party, to the Liberal Democrats, and to employers both locally in Norfolk and Waveney and nationally in the UK about how it really is for people with mental health issues when we're just trying to do the next right thing. And so, if you'd like to book a consultation, if you'd like help as a business, as an organisation, as a local councillor, to learn how to be more open, more inclusive, less judgmental and more welcoming, then I invite you to drop us an email at theproductivepessimist, that's all one word, all lowercase, at yahoo.com, or call us on 0748 2017 927, and our phones are switched on Tuesday to Saturday between 8:30am and 6:30pm, and Sundays between 9am and 2pm. Our emails are always on, and we aim to respond within no more than 12 to 24 hours maximum. So again, that's theproductivepessimist at yahoo.com, or the telephone number there is 0748 201 927. I'm Ash. I'm the head of management consultancy and training at the Productive Pessimist Limited, which also includes training in mental health, neurodiversity, disability and gender inclusion. Thank you.